all look amazing with the masks. Storytelling saved my soul. Let me say it again. Storytelling is what saved my soul. Growing up in Rwanda, I used to have nightmares of death every single night following the genocide. I'll wake up in shock, searching for any and all comfort. Shaking, I'll be searching for my mom, and she'll come to me, and she will tell me these words. It existed, but it shouldn't have existed. It died, but it shouldn't have died. Both the cats and the dogs were watching. I found the stories of my own people hanging on the roofs of each of their homes. With my mom's arms around me, telling me these words, my mind will come down, and I knew it was story time. These stories not only comforted me, but also gave me hope. Storytelling provides hope, and hope is stronger than pain and fear. In the late 50s to the early 90s, my country, Rwanda, was in the midst of off and on civil war. Conflict that led to what's now known as the Rwandan Genocide against the Tutsi. After years of propaganda, divisionism, and hatred towards Tutsi people in Rwanda, the majority of Hutu extremists wanted to exterminate the minority Tutsi race. And unfortunately, these are my earliest memories. I was almost 4 years old when this genocide happened. I remember the very first morning on April 7th, 1994. I lived in my grandpa's house with my baby brother, Fils, and several of my cousins. And that morning, my aunt Agnes, who was in her late 20s, was the only adult at the house. So she heard everyone out of bed, and she told all of us that we have to get ready to leave. She put my baby brother Fils on her back, he was almost 2 years old, and instructed the older cousins to hold hands, the younger cousins, and not let go. I was so young, so I thought we were going to church, because that was the only activity when I was young that we would leave the house early that morning. And I asked my aunt if she could give me my beautiful white dress with 3 butterflies that my grandpa had bought me Christmas before that year. And I had never seen her get so angry, and she shushed me and told me from then on, if I needed anything else, I should whisper. So she scavenged around the house and came back with my beautiful dress. She put me in it, and then she gave me a small jar of milk because she didn't know where that journey was going to end. So she gave everyone a little something to eat or drink, and we left the house. As we joined into the streets were full of people fleeing for their safety. A few miles away from my house, my grandpa's house, an attack of Interahamwe, the Hutu extremists, came. I heard that they were singing songs of hate, and celebrating the deaths of children, mothers, death of innocent people. And everyone disappeared. Everyone left. I lost my cousin Mignon's hand. I was 7 years old at the time. And I found myself in the home of Hutu extremists. I didn't know. I knew their home, so I might have ran there just because it was familiar to me. And the next thing I remember is me lining up with other Tutsi adults who were waiting for their fate. And as the killing was going on, I got scared, and I asked the killers permission to drink my milk. growing up, my Aunt Agnes had taught us if you need anything to drink or eat, you should ask an adult first. So I asked the killers with a timid voice, would you please let me drink my milk? They paused their work, killing, and looked at me and started yelling at me. And they said, I wouldn't be a tutor child if I did not ask for milk. They say that I was a child of a cockroach, child of a snake, and the child of a snake is a snake itself. And that's what they were arguing who's going to kill me. And the old man who was inside the house, who was their father, heard the arguments, and he came out of the house to see why they had stopped working. They called killing work, because it was on for 3 months. And he saw me in the line. I don't know if he got pity or of me, because he knew my grandpa, he knew my mom. So he looked at me and he told them they should be ashamed of killing an innocent child while their wives are killing children not different from them. So he stopped them and he grabbed me from the line and saved me, and they killed everyone else. That man's kindness saved me that day. But that was the very first day of the genocide. There were 90 more days to go. The years following the genocide were really challenging. I was one of the few survivors, and I was so excited to meet my parents for the first time since birth. But my country was in ruin. My country was in turmoil. There were thousands of children now orphaned, women now widowed, and everyone I knew was in such pain. So, for my mom to be able to help me with my nightmares that haunted me for years, she took me back where I survived, because she wasn't there and she didn't know what happened to me. So as we got to the house where I survived the first day of the genocide, the older man who saved me had already passed on from a natural cause. And we met with his wife. When she saw me, she didn't know that I survived. She was really happy. She was Hutu as well. She was a moderate Hutu. But she was so excited to see me. And she told my mother what happened, how I survived in her house. So I was able to put together the pieces of my own story, because I was so young, I couldn't put the pieces together. And from then on, I was able to remember when I had nightmares that they're not real, they're just dreams. Because of that woman recounted my survival story, I was able to heal little by little. Storytelling provides hope. And hope is stronger than pain and fear. The years after those moments, I was in high school, around 17 years old, and the trauma from the genocide followed me wherever I went. But one particular day, there was a program at my high school. They selected a few students to go to the memorial and learn the real history of my country. So I was one of those students. And in my mind, I was so confused. I was reluctant to go because I thought I knew what the genocide was about. I lived through it. My parents lived through it. And most of my friends had lived through it. And our daily conversations was always about genocide. So I was a little, I didn't want to go. But as we got to the museum, I started reading the stories of the victims of the genocide. And my heart started to soften. And I started wandering around the museum. I went upstairs in the room full of children pictures around. It was a big room with big photos, beautiful children, and those children were victims of the genocide. Most of them were around my age when I survived, 2 years old, 4 years old, 5, 7 years old. And beneath each photograph, there was a description of how old these kids were, what they loved, what were their dreams and hopes when they grow up, and how they were killed. And for me, that was the first time in my life I realized that I could have easily been one of those kids on the walls. And from that day, I decided to be in control of my own fate. From that day, I appreciated my life. No matter how miserable it was, I just knew that I was going to live it no matter what. At least I was alive to hope and dream. From then on, I started listening to other young women in Rwanda to hear their stories of triumph, of pain, and we shared all these stories together. We cried, sometimes we even laughed. But these stories really helped me heal. So with my love of storytelling and my love of film, I started an umbrella cinema promoters, a nonprofit was bringing together women who survived and share our stories through different mediums, especially film. And this work was really healing for me, and it led me to be appointed as a Youth Peace Ambassador for another amazing nonprofit that prevents genocide against humanity in Rwanda and runs the very same museum that inspired me to become a storyteller. So the work with Aegis Trust led me to Los Angeles, California, where I live now with my husband. And there I started sharing my story of survival, a story of my country. But I realized that most of the stories I was sharing were the stories that most Americans only heard in history books. So that really motivated me to keep doing what I was doing, because I realized that my story was not unique. Anyone, everywhere in the world, whenever I shared it, there was somebody somewhere who must be going through the same things I went through. So my husband and I started a nonprofit, Umunyana Love, which culture love, Umunyana, is in Rwanda, to share stories from all people from all around the world, listening to other people's stories, and hoping that by listening to one another, it will help us heal. And Umunyana Love has really helped us accomplish just that, healing. So now, as I understand the power of storytelling and its altering capabilities, I understand what my mother meant when she would tell me those stories years ago. It existed, but it shouldn't have existed. It died, but it shouldn't have died. Both the cats and the dogs were watching. I found the stories of my own people hanging on the roofs of each of the homes. This is how my country looked like after genocide, and what my mother had lost in it. You see, I was so young for her to tell me the details of what she must have been going through. And she was never given a chance to share her pain, because she had to take care of all of us. But now, as I am older, I know how important storytelling is. And I don't know what your personal tragedies might be. But I want to tell you this. By sharing your struggles, they become the world history. And you'll be surprised how healing telling your story can be. So share it to the world and find your healing. Storytelling, I'm gonna say it one more time. Storytelling provides hope, and hope is stronger than pain and fear, at least in my world. And today, I hope you remember that hope is stronger in your world as well.